Okay, so we are reading Chapter 6, Part 2 from Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It is set in a futuristic society that worships Ford Motors. The year of our Lord, AF 160 something. Set in the year 160 something AF. AF stands for After Ford. I feel Ford in this Chili's tonight. No, AF stands for After Ford, not as fuck. We've only been introduced to a few characters. They're super easy to keep track of, I know. The most important characters to remember are what's his name and what's her face. Right. Okay, so what's her face? Lenina, spelled Lenina. Lenina. She's the girl. She's the girl in the story. She's hot, kind of. Everybody likes her. La Nina. And El Nino. She's very pneumatic, which means she's full of air. If you know what I mean. And then there's also Bernard Marx, who really wants to date Lenina, but he's very put off by the fact that everybody else gets to fuck her. Because in this society, everybody uses condoms. I'm kidding. Babies are born in test tubes. Babies are not born, they are made. They are produced in a factory on an assembly line. And pretty much all of the characters that we've met work at the baby factory. That's their job. Most of them are alphas, which is the highest class that you can be in this society, aside from being an alpha plus. You know, there's like alphas and alpha plus. So that's like the best people in the society. And then there's all the other people. They suck. They're kind of gross. Not a Sigma. I think the only Sigma male in here would be the director. But we barely even met the director. The director had like 2 sentences. So there's Lenina and there's Bernard. And Lenina has like a couple boyfriends. I can't remember Henry Foster. She's like seeing Henry Foster. And now she's going on a date with Bernard Marx because like it's really weird that she's only with one person. And her friends are shaming her and they're peer pressuring her into going on more dates. So, Lenina and Bernard Marx are going to go on a date. And Bernard's a weird fellow. People theorize that he had alcohol accidentally introduced into his blood surrogate when he was in a test tube. And that's why Bernard is so short and weird. But Lenina likes him. Lenina thinks Bernard is an interesting man. And Bernard really wants to hate fuck Lenina. And Bernard hates everyone. Not just Lenina. Lenina's not special in that respect. Bernard actually hates Lenina less than most people. It's not his fault they put alcohol in his test tube. Yeah, Berniculus, wow. What the fuck is with the giant White Claw? You got a giant chair to sit in too? I wish. That would be really funny. I should do that one day. I should do like a normal stream, but just make everything huge. That's a good idea. Thank you, chat. Okay, let's go. I think that was a good summary. I'm leaving a lot out, but I think that was good enough. Also, you can read along with us using the PDF linked in the chat. I don't remember what the command is, but we have a PDF that you can read along with. Just go to the list of, my brain doesn't work anymore. Just click on the chapter, and the chapter will go. It'll go to what chapter we're on if you just click on the chapter if you want to read along. And also, you don't have to know what's going on. I just appreciate you guys being here and listening. But if you want to go back and hear the first 6.1 chapters, I will reinstate the VODs shortly. We have it all in the VOD highlights. I'm not even sure if they're published right now because I got banned for 7 days and all of my VODs were unpublished. But for tonight, you can just listen to chapter 6 part 2, and then later I will republish the rest of the chapters so that you can watch and listen if you want to. Let's go. You're welcome. Thank you. Chapter 6, Part 2. Halting for a moment outside the door of the director's room, Bernard drew a deep breath and squared his shoulders, bracing himself to meet the dislike and disapproval which he was certain of finding within. Oh my God. Sir. Did somebody put alcohol in your blood surrogate? Who hurt you? Was her name Mommy? Halting for a moment outside the door of the director's room, Bernard drew a deep breath and squared his shoulders, bracing himself to meet the dislike and disapproval which he was certain of finding within. He knocked and entered. Good to see you all, by the way. A permit for you to initial, Director, he said as airily as possible, and laid the paper on the writing table. The director glanced at him sourly. But the stamp of the World Controller's office was at the head of the paper, and the signature of Mustafa Mond, black and bold, across the bottom. Everything was perfectly in order. The director had no choice. He penciled his initials, 2 small pale letters, abject at the feet of Mustafa Mond, and was about to return the paper without a word of comment or a genial Ford speed when his eye was caught by something written in the body of the permit. For the New Mexican reservation, he said, and his tone, the face he lifted to Bernard, expressed a kind of agitated astonishment. Surprised by his surprise, Bernard nodded. There was a silence. The director leaned back in his chair, frowning. How long ago was it? He said, speaking more to himself than to Bernard. 20 years, I suppose. Nearer 25. I must have been your age. He sighed and shook his head. Bernard felt extremely uncomfortable. A man so conventional, so scrupulously correct as the director, and to commit so gross a solecism, it made him want to hide his face, to run out of the room. Not that he himself saw anything intrinsically objectionable in people talking about the remote past. That was one of those hypnopatic prejudices he had, so he imagined, completely got rid of. What actually made him feel shy was that the knowledge that the director disapproved, and yet had been betrayed into doing the forbidden thing. Oh my God, I can't read. Sorry, it's been a while. It made him want to hide his face and run out of his room. Not that he himself saw anything intrinsically objectionable in people talking about the past, as that was one of those hypnopatic prejudices that he had completely got rid of. What actually made him feel shy was the knowledge that the director disapproved and yet had been betrayed into doing the forbidden thing. Under what inward compulsion? Through his discomfort, Bernard eagerly listened. I had the same idea as you, the director was saying. I wanted to have a look at the Savages. Got a permit for New Mexico and went there for my summer holiday. With the girl I was having at the moment. She was a beta minus, I think. He shut his eyes. I think she had yellow hair. Anyhow, she was pneumatic, particularly pneumatic. I remember that. Well, we went there and we looked at the Savages, and we rode about on horses and all that. And then, it was almost the last day of my leave. Then, well, she got lost. We'd gone riding up on one of those revolting mountains, and it was horribly hot and oppressive. And after lunch we went to sleep. Or at least I did. She must have gone for a walk. Alone. At any rate, when I woke up, she wasn't there. And the most frightful thunderstorm I'd ever heard was bursting upon us. And it poured and roared and flashed. And the horses broke loose and ran away. And I fell down trying to catch them and hurt my knee so that I could hardly walk. Still, I searched and I shouted and I searched, but there was no sign of her. Then I thought she must have gone back to the rest house by herself. So I crawled down the valley by the way we had come. My knee was agonizingly painful, and I'd lost my soma. It took me hours. I didn't get back to the rest house until after midnight, and she wasn't there. She wasn't there, the director repeated. There was a silence. "Well," he resumed at last, "the next day there was a search, but we couldn't find her. She must have fallen into a gully somewhere, or been eaten by a mountain lion. Ford knows. Anyhow, it was horrible. It upset me very much at the time. More than it ought to have, I dare say. Because after all, it's the sort of accident that might have happened to anyone. And of course, the social body persists. Although the component cells may change. But this sleep-taught consolation did not seem to be very effective. Shaking his head, "I actually dream about it sometimes," the director went on in a low voice. "I dream of being woken up by that peal of thunder and finding her gone. Dream of searching and searching for her under the trees." He lapsed into the silence of reminiscence. "You must have had a terrible shock," said Bernard, almost enviously. At the sound of his voice, the director started into a guilty realization of where he was. Shot a glance at Bernard, and averting his eyes, blushed darkly. Looked at him again with sudden suspicion, and angrily on his dignity. "Don't imagine," he said, "that I'd had any indecorous relation with the girl. Nothing emotional, nothing long drawn. It was all perfectly healthy and normal." He handed Bernard the permit. "I really don't know why I bored you with this trivial anecdote." Furious with himself for having given away a discreditable secret, he vented his rage on Bernard. The look in his eyes was now, frankly, malignant. "And I should like to take this opportunity, Mr. Marks," he went on, "of saying that I'm not at all pleased with the reports I receive of your behavior outside working hours. You may say that this is not my business, but it is. I have the good name of the center to think about. My workers must be above suspicion, particularly those of the highest caste. Alphas are so conditioned that they do not have to be infantile in their emotional behavior. But that is all the more reason for making a special effort to conform. And so, Mr. Marks, I give you a fair warning." The director's voice vibrated with an indignation that had now become wholly righteous and impersonal. It was the expression of the disapproval of society itself. "If I ever hear again of any lapse from a proper standard of infantile decorum, I shall ask for your transference to the sub-center, preferably to Iceland. Good morning." And swiveling round in his chair, he picked up his pen and began to write. "That'll teach him," he said to himself. But he was mistaken, for Bernard left the room with a swagger, exulting as he banged the door behind him, in the thought that he stood alone, embattled against the order of things, elated by the intoxicating consciousness of his individual significance and importance. Even the thought of persecution left him undismayed, was rather tonic than depressing. He felt strong enough to meet and overcome affliction, strong enough to face even Iceland. And this confidence was the greater for his not for a moment really believing that he would be called upon to face anything at all. People simply weren't transferred for things like that. Iceland was just a threat, a most stimulating and life-giving threat. Walking along the corridor, he actually whistled. Heroic was the account he gave of that evening of his interview with the DHC. Whereupon, it concluded, I simply told him to go to the bottomless past and marched out of the room. And that was that. He looked at Helmholtz Watson expectantly, awaiting his due reward of sympathy, encouragement, admiration. But no word came. Helmholtz sat silent, staring at the floor. He liked Bernard. He was grateful to him for being the only man of his acquaintance with whom he could talk about the subjects he felt to be important. Nevertheless, there were things in Bernard that he hated. This boasting, for example. And the outbursts of abject self-pity with which it alternated. And his deplorable habit of being bold after the event. And full, in absence, of the most extraordinary presence of mind. He hated these things. Just because he liked Bernard. The seconds passed. Helmholtz continued to stare at the floor. And suddenly Bernard blushed and turned away. That was part 2. I have to pee again. Thank you for listening. I know, the notes are so funny. Also, okay, so since we have the DHC and Helmholtz that we know in this chapter, aside from Bernard and Lenina, Helmholtz Watson is an alpha plus, just like Bernard, but he is every inch an alpha plus. Unlike Bernard, Helmholtz is actually an alpha plus. Helmholtz Watson is exactly what he sounds like. And he's probably Bernard's best friend. But obviously the two have some disparities. And also the DHC is not the world director. The DHC is the director of hatcheries and conditioning. That's what the HC stands for. Hatcheries and conditioning, which is how babies are made and how they're raised until they're adults. Hatched and then conditioned. So the director here was the director of hatcheries and conditioning. There's also a world director, but we haven't really seen much of him. And when I get back, we'll do part 3. Wait, repeat that? I never learned how they were made. Oh, that's in chapter 1 and 2, I think. Okay, but I'll give you a rundown. Babies are born in test tubes. Alphas are like the best embryos. Oh my god, there's so much you guys don't know. The world is made of sets of twins, which are actually like, they're not twins. They're Bakhanovsky twins, or what are they called? Bakhanovsky groups. They're called Bakhanovsky groups. And by dosing an embryo with a specified amount of radiation, you can cause that embryo to bud like a flower or like a weed. Like weed, you know what I mean? They bud the embryos into they can bud one embryo into 196 identical twins, or 196 identical twins isn't the right word. I don't know the right word. And they're normal. They live normal lives. They have a normal lifespan. They're kind of like clones, but not in the way that we think about clones usually. But so people are born in batches of like up to almost 200 clones. And so you have a batch, you have a Bokanovsky group of 190, and they're all alphas. Then you have a Bokanovsky group of 190 of all gammas or epsilons. And how they determine what your caste will be in life is they put a little bit of alcohol into your test tube. So the people that they want working at the lowest stations, you know, like the janitors or whatever, they turn their whole Bokanovsky group, they degrade them with alcohol before they're born. This whole process is completely fictional, by the way. No, you're not born drunk. You're born stunted a little bit. So that, but then that's not all. That's not all, because birth does not designate station. They also condition you. After you're born from a test tube, they start conditioning. Which, if you're in the lower caste, that involves giving you electric shocks when you look at books and flowers. So that way, when you're an adult, when you see a flower or a book, you want to throw up. You fear knowledge, and you fear whatever they want you to fear, really. They whisper things into your ear at night while you sleep, and then during the day, they condition you to like what they want you to like and hate what they want you to hate. So if you're a gamma or an epsilon, you hate books, you hate nature, and you love working because you were raised that way. You're raised that way very strictly. There was a whole scene in the book where they described like giving electric shocks to babies. Pretty horrible. I'll be right back.